am Paula Webb, a librarian at the University of South Alabama. Today I'm at the Ferns House, and on social media it is called 19 Columns. We are interviewing the current owner, Brian Olson. Thank you for meeting with us today, Brian.
Thank you for coming to talk about the house.
No problem. So, what can you tell us about the house?
Well, the house was built in 1905 by the Fern family. It was built by Betsy Fernand, who became Betsy Fernand Sison with her marriage to William Keeling Sison. Betsy comes from a long line of the Fern family. George Fern was her neighbor and also a real estate developer here in Mobile, and they built the country club and a lot of iconic structures here in Mobile. They had moved here in the late 1860s, right after the Civil War, and they moved from Milton, Kentucky. I think they came down as some kind of reconstruction after the Civil War, and they not only helped develop Mobile, but they also helped divide the lumber and put together the library system. So they were quite iconic or a really noted family in Mobile at the turn of the century.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the Fern family, and who did they have build the house?
So the house was designed by George B. Rogers. Again, he's a really kind of famous architect here in Mobile at the turn of the century. He did 1806, which is Betsy's brother's home. It's right next door, and also designed this house. George was doing some revolutionary, advancements in home building. Most of his houses have some kind of deep basement, which cools the house. The framing was unorthodox for this part of the country, and also experimenting with styles and materials.
Now, this is called the Ferns Sison house?
Yeah, it was built by Betsy Fernand Sison. So everything that was documented on her over the years, from cigarette cases, they were a gift from the country club. Her name was Betsy Fernand Sison. And since the house was a wedding gift to her in November 8th, 1905, we just always refer to it as the Betsy Fernand Sison house. She married William Keeling Sison, around the turn of the century. He had come from England and was also in the real estate business.
Okay. Now, what's been the progress for the house? It was the Ferns Sison house, and
it was the Ferns Sison house until 1910. They lived in it only about 5 or 6 years, and it was then sold to William Hunter. And William Hunter lived here for a very long time. He lived here from about 1910 to about 1940.
Now, where did the Ferns Sisons go?
They moved to 1930 Spring Hill, which is that block right at the Bragg Mitchell Mansion. Okay. And I'm not quite sure which house or even if it exists, but I know their address using census from 1910 was 1930 Spring Hill. Okay. They stayed there for a number of years. Betsy and William and her brother ended up moving to their new development, which was Shore Acres, which was a very large development. I think it was about 500 acres. Okay. And it was a strip of land that went from the bay all the way to the Dog River.
Okay. And today that's where
I think there's fragments of it left, but I think the premier neighborhood that they lived in is where the Brooklyn Field is located.
Okay. Very interesting. So, what happened? So the Hunters bought the house.
The Hunters bought the house for about $13,000 and some adjoining land behind the house.
And that was about what year?
About 1910.
1910.
And Hunter Avenue behind the house is actually named after William Hunter. And the Hunters were kind of responsible for changing the fabric of this area. The Ferns were dedicated to building large, stately homes. William Hunter was kind of dedicated to building smaller, more efficient homes, arts and crafts, prairie-style homes, which is indicative of the 19-teens and the 1920s. That was really in vogue. But his homes were in the 2,000 square foot range or the 1,700 square foot range, not 4,000 square foot like the Ferns had been so dedicated to.
Okay, so his house, he was involved with a lot of the craftsmen that are in the area?
Yeah, if you drive down Houston or Hunter or even Demouy or up Reed, you can see the shift. If you go up North Monterey, you see these very large fern houses, and those are built from 1900 to about 1912. And those are 2-story large homes. If you go to Reed Street, you'll see the opposite. You'll see mission style arts and craft style homes, but they're in the 1,800 square foot. So you could see the juxtaposition between the Ferns and the Hunters.
And then the Hunter Street is named for Mr. Hunter?
Correct. It's named for William Hunter.
Who's Houston Street named for?
I have no idea.
Okay, I was just curious. I was like,
Sure,
you knew that
military
one.
something.
Yes, definitely. We'll have to.
Or is it Houston Street? Anyways.
Yeah, somebody out there might know. You never know. Right?
Well, when I was in New York, it was Houston, right? And then here it's Houston. But
Oh, okay.
I'm sure there's somebody famous that's named that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the Hunters had it. How long did they live here?
The Hunters lived here till about 1940, and then the ownership changed to a woman named Mary, or Mimi, Harris Coffin. So Mary Harris was born of R.O. Harris. She was the eldest child of R.O. Harris. He was a local grocer. He had a grocery store where Three Georges on Dauphin is, and he also was part of a vice president of a bank. And they lived in the 900 block of Government in a very stately, unique house. That house was in existence till I think the 70s, and it was demolished for a 1-story bank building. She bought this house in the 40s, and her and Andrew moved here. She married Andrew when she was in her 50s. They never had children. They had some kind of foster children that came from Europe after or during, just before World War II. And so I kind of think in all my genealogy research that they were actually kind of related. They were like a second cousin, and they sent them here knowing that there was a pending war coming.
Right.
And she raised 2 boys from England here and 2 girls.
Okay.
Kind of as her own, but they were not biological. She lived here till the 1980s. So she had 40 years of stewardship of the house.
Okay.
And Andrew had passed away in the 60s, and I think the house was starting to get a little ragtag then, because in 1982, the house went through a massive renovation. And it became the Mobile Decorator's showcase house.
Oh, really?
In the early 80s. And it was documented. There's a book on it, and there was lots of press. And the money was given to charity that was raised for the Decorator's showcase house.
Okay.
And I think it sat after it was renovation again and started to deteriorate. But
Wow.
Mary ended up moving to South Monterey after she left this house. And after the Harrises, the house went through a sea of owners. And it was also turned into an apartment building. It was broken up into apartments. One half was commercial. It was an insurance agency, and it was also an accounting firm for a while. The formal dining room that we're sitting in now was turned into a studio apartment. And the breakfast room was turned into a bedroom. And the original kitchen was their kitchen. Upstairs was turned into 2 apartments. And then the carriage house was subdivided into apartments.
Okay. All right. So the house has had a lot of history, and then you come along.
Yeah, we were originally moving to New Orleans. My partner loves New Orleans. We had this love affair. We had actually made an offer on a house and came to Mobile. I'd been here as a child, but I hadn't been here in 30 or 40 years. Came here to visit a friend and we did a pit stop. And we were like, it's so charming. There's so much potential. We saw that there was a very active restoration movement here, but we also saw that there was a lot of houses that needed a lot of love. Right. So we could see block after block of beautiful home, and every third block there was that one house that needed love. So we thought it would be a great place to get active in. Does that make sense? Like we kind of thought like, oh, well, there's already a movement here.
Right.
We'll just jump in because we could definitely add to the mix of restoring homes.
Right.
So that's how we got here. And we killed the deal in New Orleans and came here and have been happy ever since.
Awesome. That's phenomenal. Okay, so now you're here.
Now I'm here.
And y'all have done a great job. You've renovated the house.
Thank
You're in the process of doing more and more renovations. You're replacing the roof soon. You're adding the pool and keeping to the Roger style.
So the intent from the get-go, we bought the house thinking that since it had been on and off the market for 17 years, if we didn't buy it, maybe no one else was. And it was in dire need of renovation. The porch, part of the veranda, the ceiling had collapsed. The windows were rotted. It was really deteriorated. So our intent was to buy it and preserve it as much as we could to the George B. Rogers design, all the way to having the maid's bell in the floor in the dining room, to preserving the silver closet or the breakfast room. And we weren't going to do one of those open concept things. We're not really open concept people. We're closed concept people. And we felt that we would focus on George B.'s original intent for the house, this kind of French galleon design. And then you asked about the pool and the roof. So those are stories of itself. The roof has hurricane damage. In fact, I find pieces of it in the yard all the time. And it's not one of those things you could just call up and have it ordered and, go to Home Depot and buy tiles. The tiles, they're originally Louisi tiles, and they're painted green. The roof was not originally green. And most importantly, the 1905 house didn't even have a tile roof. That came much later. It originally had a creosote-soaked wood shake that was custom made for the house under George B. Now, we are doing a new tile roof, and so we are matching the S-type tile. We are not doing it in green. We are doing it in a blend, which is really consistent with what the house would have looked like for 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
Those tiles are Portuguese, and the most important thing, they're hurricane rated. So they clip together, and they're like 150 mile an hour winds. They'll stay on, and they have a 100-year warranty. I didn't want to spend a lot of money taking them all off to rebuild the decking of the house and putting something old back for the cost. So I figured the cost is so astronomical, we might as well do it one time and have it for the next 100 years, for the next people.
That's
then
fascinating and wonderful.
Thank you. Well, it's been, the roof has been a nightmare, and I think it's been a nightmare for a long time. And it'll be set, it'll be good all the way till 100 years from now. So. And then you asked about the pool. The pool we're doing, again, we didn't want to do a liner pool. We wanted to do a concrete, gunite, 1920s inspired kind of Hollywood with a tinge of the Mediterranean in it. So we've done kind of Mallorca tile around it. We've done a fountain that's in a very kind of Mediterranean, south of France design. And it has multiple tiles on it and a waterfall. It's something you would have seen in Hollywood in the 1920s.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today. And thank you so much for allowing us to interview today and archive some of this great information.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about the house. I look forward to reading your book when it comes out soon.
Thank you.
I think we both have a passion for history and architecture, so it's great having this interview with you, and I look forward to doing stuff in the future.
Well, thank you.
So
and
thank
what
you.
is the name of your social media page again? So
We go by 19 columns. The house has 19 columns that wrap around the veranda. Originally it had 21 columns. There were 2 pilasters that I guess they disappeared. So we've been calling it 19 columns in honor of those 19 columns. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to interviewing you again in the future.
Thank you.